Steve Rogers stared out the viewport of the shuttle as it approached the massive alien vessel. The ship, called Enlightenment, stretched at least a mile long, its silver surface reflecting the distant sun. His heart beat faster as reality sank. He was really going to live among aliens for the next year. "Nervous?" asked Amy Phillips from the seat beside him. Her long brown hair was pulled back in a neat ponytail, and she clutched her travel mug like it contained liquid gold instead of coffee. "A little," Steve admitted. "Wouldn't you be? We're the first humans to join the Galactic Integration Program." Amy took a sip from her mug and smiled. "I'm just glad I packed enough coffee beans to last me. I heard the food synthesizers can't quite get Earth flavors right." The shuttle docked with a gentle bump, and the 20 human delegates gathered their personal items. Steve checked his bag one last time, making sure his own coffee supply was secure. If he was going to represent humanity among the stars, he needed to be alert. A smooth voice came over the speakers. "Human delegates, welcome to the Enlightenment. Please proceed through the airlock for decontamination and orientation." The group walked through a corridor of soft blue light. Steve felt a tingling sensation on his skin, but nothing unpleasant. At the end of the corridor stood their greeting party, 5 aliens of different species, led by a tall, slender being with translucent blue skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern. "I am Professor Zinter of the Zellner," the alien said, its voice coming through a small translator device. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome Earth to the community of spacefaring civilizations." The professor's 4 eyes blinked, in sequence as it studied the humans. "As your primary educator, I will guide your integration into galactic society. The other species have much to learn from you, as you have much to learn from them." Steve noticed how the aliens kept a careful distance from the human group. Was it caution? Respect? Or something else? Professor Zinter led them through the ship to their living quarters. The hallways were filled with aliens of all shapes and sizes. Some walked on tentacles, others hovered above the ground, and a few moved on multiple legs like insects. All of them stopped to stare at the humans. "Your species is of great interest," the professor explained. "Few life forms evolve on planets with such high gravity and extreme temperature variations. Your physical resilience is remarkable." The human quarters were comfortable enough. Private sleeping rooms connected to a shared common area. Large viewports showed the stars outside, and the furniture adjusted automatically to human body shapes. "Rest now," Professor Zinter said. "Tomorrow, you will meet your fellow students from 12 other worlds. Classes begin at the 7th bell." After the professor left, the humans gathered in their common room, excited and overwhelmed. "Did you see those floating jellyfish things?" Greg Martinez asked, a wide grin on his face. The young pilot from New Mexico couldn't contain his excitement. "And those rock people. I swear one of them was looking right through me." "They're called lithoids," said Amy, who had studied the briefing materials thoroughly. "Their thought processes are much slower than ours because their neural pathways are crystalline." Steve unpacked his things, carefully setting up his small coffee maker on the counter in the common area. Several other humans were doing the same with their own coffee supplies. The familiar smell of brewing coffee soon filled the room, bringing a sense of home amid the strangeness. The next morning, after a good night's sleep in the slightly too soft alien beds, the humans prepared for their first day of classes. Steve poured himself a large cup of coffee, breathing in the rich aroma before taking his first sip. "I couldn't function without this," he said to Amy, who was already on her second cup. "Tell me about it," she replied. "I didn't spend 6 years becoming a xenolinguist to embarrass myself because I was undercaffeinated." The human group made their way to the central learning hall, a vast circular room with tiered seating. Various alien species were already there, some sitting, others standing or floating in specialized areas. Professor Zintar stood at the center on a raised platform. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in galactic cooperation. Each of you represents your world's finest qualities. Together, we will learn, grow, and prepare for a future where all our species work as one. The professor began calling each delegation forward for introductions. The Vrone, small purple beings with large eyes, described their underwater cities. The Arachne, who resembled large spiders, demonstrated their silk-weaving technology. Each species shared something unique about their culture. When it was Earth's turn, Steve stepped forward as the group's chosen speaker. "We bring greetings from Earth," he said, trying to project confidence. "Humans are explorers by nature. We're honored to join this program and learn from all of you." During his speech, Steve noticed several aliens pointing at the cups some humans had brought with them. The professor's eyes narrowed, focusing on Amy as she took a sip from her travel mug. After the introductions, the students were given time to mingle. Steve found himself surrounded by curious aliens asking questions about Earth. "Is it true your planet has liquid water just falling from the sky?" asked a gaseous being contained in a special suit. "Yes, we call it rain," Steve explained. "And you actually go out in it?" The alien suit changed colors in what might have been shock. Across the room, Amy was showing her coffee mug to a group of interested aliens when Professor Zintar approached quickly. All four eyes focused intently on the cup. "What substance are you consuming?" the professor demanded, several appendages gesturing frantically. The room grew quiet. Amy looked confused. "It's just coffee. Would you like to try some?" The professor's color shifted to a disturbing shade of purple. "You willingly ingest a neurotoxic stimulant? For alertness?" Steve moved closer, suddenly aware that every alien in the room was staring at the humans with new expressions. Was that fear? "It's perfectly safe for humans," Steve explained. "We've been drinking it for centuries." "Safe?" Professor Zinter's voice modulator crackled with disbelief. "Our scans show it contains compounds that would cause severe neurological damage to most sentient beings in this room." The professor raised all four arms, addressing the now concerned alien students. "Class dismissed early today. Tomorrow, we will begin with an important safety lecture on hazardous substances, apparently including human beverages." As the aliens hurried from the room, giving the humans a wide berth, Professor Zintor turned back to Steve and Amy. "Please, secure all of these ... beverages ... in your quarters immediately. I had no idea humans regularly consume such dangerous compounds. This requires further study." The humans looked at each other in confusion as the professor hurried away. Greg leaned over to Steve, whispering, "So much for making a good first impression. Wait until they find out about hot sauce." The next morning, all 20 human delegates sat in the front row of the learning hall. The other alien students kept a noticeable distance, leaving several empty rows behind them. Steve noticed how some aliens wore what appeared to be protective gear, and others had breathing apparatuses engaged. Professor Zintar stood at the center of the room, multiple display screens hovering around the teaching platform. The professor's blue skin seemed paler today, perhaps from stress. Today's emergency lecture concerns hazardous substances in the galaxy, Professor Zinter announced. Specifically, those originating from Earth. A main screen displayed a familiar brown liquid, coffee. This substance, which humans call coffee, contains a compound known as caffeine. The screen showed the molecular structure. For most species, represented in this room, this molecule would cause severe neurological disruption, cardiac abnormalities, and possibly death. Amy raised her hand. "Professor, with all respect, Coffee is completely safe for humans. It's part of our daily routine. The professor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in sequence. That is precisely why this lecture is necessary. What humans consider safe may be dangerous to others. Zinta gestured to another screen, showing a human brain scan. These images taken from Delegate Phillips show increased neural activity, an elevated heart rate after consuming this beverage. Steve glanced at Amy, who looked embarrassed at being used as an example. Furthermore, the professor continued, our analysis indicates this substance creates dependency. Many humans display withdrawal symptoms without regular consumption. Is this not concerning to your species? Greg Martinez stood up. It's no different from the Vrone needing their morning light bath or the lithoids requiring mineral supplements. Every species has their needs. Professor Zintor's color shifted slightly toward purple. A light bath does not alter brain chemistry. Delegate Martinez. The screens changed to show other Earth beverages: tea, soda, energy drinks, and alcohol, each with warning symbols beside them. All of these contain compounds classified as restricted substances in most galactic territories. Yet humans consume them freely, often for pleasure. The professor's voice modulator couldn't hide the tone of disbelief. A lithoid student raised a crystalline limb. Query: do humans deliberately poison themselves for enjoyment? Before any human could answer, Professor Zinter intervened. That is an oversimplification. Human biology has apparently adapted to process these toxins. What we find dangerous, they find ... stimulating. The lecture continued for another hour. Steve felt increasingly uncomfortable as Earth's entire food and drink culture was dissected and labeled as potentially hazardous. By the end, the aliens were looking at the humans with a mixture of fear and fascination. In conclusion, Professor Zinter said, all human delegates must register their Earth origin consumables with ship security. Any sharing of these substances with non-human species is strictly forbidden. As the class dispersed, Steve, Amy, and Greg stayed behind. Professor, Steve said, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We didn't realize our normal beverages would cause such concern. Professor Zinter's posture softened slightly. I understand this is not intentional, Delegate. Rogers, your species evolved on a planet with unique chemical compositions. What is normal for you is exotic to us. Amy stepped forward. We're here to learn about each other. Perhaps this is a good starting point to understand our biological differences. Professor seemed to consider this an interesting perspective. Perhaps we could arrange a controlled demonstration for scientific purposes. Our xenobiologists would be quite interested. Later that day, in the human quarters, the delegates gathered to discuss the situation. So we have to register our coffee like it's a weapon, Greg said, dropping into a chair. This is not how I imagined first contact would go. Amy was reviewing data on her tablet. Actually, I've been looking at the galactic substance classifications. Coffee is listed in the same category as mild nerve agents. No wonder they're concerned. Steve poured himself a cup from the communal coffee maker, enjoying the rich aroma. At least they didn't confiscate it. I couldn't function without my morning cup. None of us could, laughed Linda Kim, another delegate who had been quiet until now. Maybe that's what worries them. They see us as addicts. Or maybe, Steve said thoughtfully, they see us as tougher than we look. Think about it. We casually drink something that would send most of them to the medical bay. The next few days of classes were less dramatic. The humans learned about galactic history, interspecies diplomacy, and faster-than-light travel theory. They were careful to keep their coffee and other Earth beverages within their quarters, respecting the concerns of their alien classmates. A week after the coffee incident, as the humans now called it, Professor Zinter approached Steve after class. Delegate Rogers, the Science Division has requested your assistance. They wish to conduct a controlled study of human consumption of ... coffee. The professor still couldn't say the word without a slight color change. Would you be willing to participate? Steve nodded. Of course. Anything to help build understanding. The science lab was a large chamber filled with strange equipment. A team of alien researchers from various species waited there, along with several monitoring devices. The procedure is simple, explained Klon, the head researcher who resembled a tall insect with 4 arms. We will scan your physiology before, during, and after you consume your beverage. All from a safe distance, of course. Steve sat in the designated chair as sensors were aimed at him from several feet away. A small table beside him held a coffee maker and his favorite mug. Please proceed with your normal ritual, Klon instructed from behind a transparent barrier. Feeling like a lab specimen, Steve went through his usual routine, grinding the beans, brewing the coffee, adding a small amount of sugar. The aliens watched intently, recording every movement. When Steve took his first sip, several monitoring devices beeped urgently. Fascinating, Klon said, mandibles clicking excitedly. Neural activity is increasing, yet cognitive function remains stable, heart rate elevated, but within safe parameters. As Steve finished his cup, the researchers muttered among themselves, comparing notes and readings. May I ask a question? Steve said, What do your species drink to start the day? Klon tilted his head. Most of us absorb necessary nutrients through specialized filters or membranes. The concept of drinking for stimulation rather than sustenance is ... uniquely human. After the tests were complete, Professor Zinter entered the lab to review the results. It appears, the professor said slowly, that humans have evolved remarkable detoxification systems. What would harm others strengthens you. Zinter looked directly at Steve with all 4 eyes. This raises interesting questions about your species' development and potential. As Steve left the lab, he noticed the aliens looking at him differently. Not with fear, but with something that might have been respect. How did it go? Amy asked when he returned to the human quarters. Steve smiled. I think we just became the tough kids in class. 3 weeks into the program, the Enlightenment docked at Centauri Station for supplies and maintenance. The massive space station orbited a gas giant in a nearby star system, serving as a hub for various alien ships and traders from across the galaxy. Shore leave has been approved for all delegates, Professor Zinter announced at the end of class. You may explore the station for the next 48 hours. Your identification badges will grant you access to approved sectors only. Human delegates could barely contain their excitement. After weeks of eating synthesized food that never quite tasted right, the prospect of finding new food and drinks was thrilling. I heard there's an Earth goods shop on the station, Greg told Steve and Amy as they walked toward the docking bay. A human who graduated from the program last cycle set it up to serve the growing number of Earth ships passing through. Amy's eyes lit up. Real coffee? Not the freeze-dried emergency supply we've been rationing? Only one way to find out, Steve said with a smile. The 3 humans stepped onto Centauri Station, immediately overwhelmed by the sights, sounds, and smells. Hundreds of alien species moved through the wide corridors, some familiar from their classes, others completely new. Market stalls lined the main promenade, selling everything from exotic fabrics to strange glowing crystals. Greg checked his handheld map. The Earth shop should be in the next sector, near the food court. They passed by alien food vendors offering dishes that bubbled, glowed, or changed colors. Some smelled wonderful, others made them quicken their pace. Finally, they spotted a small shop with a sign that read, Terra Treats in English inside. The shelves held packaged foods from Earth, chips, cookies, dried fruits, and in the back corner, a display of coffee beans. The shop owner, a burly man with a thick beard, greeted them warmly. "Fellow humans, welcome," he boomed. "I'm Joe Evans, graduated from the program 2 years ago and decided to stay out here. You folks must be from the new delegation. How did you guess?" Amy asked. Joe laughed. The look of desperation when you saw real coffee. The ship's food synthesizers never get it right, do they? The 3 delegates purchased several bags of coffee beans at prices that would have been outrageous on Earth, along with a small brewing machine for their common room. Joe threw in some chocolate bars as a bonus. "A word of advice," Joe said as they were leaving. "Be careful with the Earth goods around other species. Some get curious and want to try what we're having. Had an incident last year with a Medusan who sampled hot sauce. Poor thing was in the medical bay for a week." Back aboard the Enlightenment, word spread quickly among the human delegates about the coffee supply. Their common room became an unofficial gathering spot each morning, with the rich aroma of fresh coffee drawing every human on board. Got the aliens noticed the change in routine. Some observed from a distance, clearly curious about the ritual that had the humans so excited. One morning, while most humans were attending an early class, a young Praxian named Klik slipped into the empty human common room. The arachnoid alien had 8 limbs and large compound eyes that shifted color with its moods. Klik was known among the delegates as especially curious about humans. The coffee maker had been left on, keeping the remaining coffee warm. Klik approached cautiously, extending a sensory appendage to sample the aroma. The alien's eyes flashed. With interest, carefully using 2 of its limbs, Klik poured a small amount of coffee into a cup and brought it to its mouthparts. Just a tiny sip. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Klik dropped the cup and collapsed to the floor, all 8 limbs thrashing wildly. The alien's body changed colors rapidly, flashing between bright red and deep purple. A high-pitched keening sound filled the room. Linda Kim walked in just as this was happening. She froze for a second, then slapped the emergency button on the wall. "Medical emergency in human quarters," she shouted. "Alien down." Within minutes, the ship's medical team arrived, followed closely by Professor Zinter. They placed Klik on a floating stretcher and rushed the convulsing alien to the medical bay. Alarms blared throughout the ship. All classes were canceled, and an announcement ordered all delegates to return to their quarters immediately. 2 hours later, Professor Zinter entered the human common room, accompanied by 4 security officers. The professor's skin had turned a deep, angry purple. "All human delegates, report to the conference room immediately," Zinter ordered, voice modulator unable to hide the fury. "Your dangerous substances have poisoned a student." In the conference room, the 20 human delegates sat in uncomfortable silence as Zinter paced before them. "Student Klik is stabilized, but remains in serious condition," the professor said. "The medical team had to place the student in an induced coma while the toxin is filtered from their system." "We didn't give Klik any coffee," Steve protested. "The student must have taken it without permission." "That is irrelevant," Zinter snapped. "You were warned about the dangers these substances pose to other species. Yet you continued to bring them aboard and left them accessible." Amy stepped forward. "How is Klik doing? Will there be permanent damage?" The professor's color softened slightly. "The prognosis is positive. Praxians have remarkable regenerative abilities. But that does not excuse what happened." "Of course not," Steve agreed. "We're very sorry, and will take full responsibility for securing our Earth products." Professor Zintor raised all 4 arms. "That will not be necessary. All Earth beverages are hereby confiscated. Furthermore, the Galactic Council has been notified of this incident. They are considering whether humans should continue in the integration program at all." The humans exchanged worried glances. Their first opportunity to join galactic society might be ruined over a cup of coffee. Until a decision is reached, all human delegates are confined to quarters except for mealtimes, Zinter continued. Classes are suspended for your group. As the professor left, the humans sat in stunned silence. Great, Greg muttered. One curious alien, and suddenly we're too dangerous to be around. Can you blame them? Linda asked. We drink poison for breakfast. From their perspective, we're walking biohazards. Steve gazed out the viewport at the stars. We need to find a way to fix this, to show them we're not a danger. How? Amy asked. By giving up coffee forever? Steve shook his head. No, by helping them understand us better. There must be a reason humans evolved to process these compounds when other species can't. If we can figure that out, maybe we can turn this disaster into a breakthrough. As they returned to their confined quarters, Steve couldn't help but wonder if coffee had just ended humanity's first attempt at joining the galactic community. Confined to their quarters, the human delegates tried to make the best of their situation. Steve spent hours staring at the ceiling of his room, wondering how something as simple as coffee could cause such a diplomatic crisis. On the third day of their confinement, Amy knocked on Steve's door, her face bright with excitement. I have an idea, she said, rushing in with her tablet. We need to understand exactly why coffee affected Click so badly. Greg has been studying xenobiology. I think we should compare Praxian biology with human biology. Steve sat up. How? We don't have access to the ship's database anymore. Amy smiled and held up a small data chip. Linda downloaded some xenobiology texts for a project before all this happened. We can at least start there. They gathered in Greg's room, where he had set up an impromptu research station on his desk. The three of them spent hours reviewing the limited information they had on Praxian physiology. Look at this, Greg said, pointing to a molecular diagram. Praxians process certain compounds completely differently than we do. Their nervous system uses different neurotransmitters. Amy expanded the research to other species from the texts Linda had downloaded. It's not just coffee. Almost everything humans consume would be toxic to most other species. Our entire biology is based on processing compounds that would be lethal to others. Steve studied the diagrams carefully. So what's safe for us is dangerous for them. But why? What made humans evolve this way? Greg scrolled through more data. Earth has some unique properties compared to most habitable planets. Higher gravity, more radiation from our sun, more diverse and sometimes toxic plant life. Maybe we had to adapt to process toxins just to survive. They were interrupted by a soft chime from the door. Professor Zinter entered, the alien's color a more neutral blue than the angry purple from days before. Delegates, the professor said. I have news regarding Student Click. The humans tensed, fearing the worst. The student has recovered fully, Zinter continued, and surprisingly has requested to speak with you. The professor led them to the medical bay. Click sat on an examination table, the young Praxian's color now a healthy green. All 8 limbs moved normally, showing no signs of the violent reaction from before. I wish to apologize, Click said through a translator device. My curiosity caused this trouble for everyone. I should not have tasted your beverage without permission. We're just glad you're okay, Steve said. We should have been more careful about leaving it accessible. Click's compound eyes shifted to a blue hue. The experience was frightening, but fascinating. For 7 seconds before I lost consciousness, I could perceive time differently. I understand why humans might value this sensation. Professor Zinter made a sound that might have been a sigh. This is precisely the concerning attitude I feared. Student Click, the human beverage could have killed you. But it didn't, Click replied. And the medical team has learned much from treating me. Dr. Venn wants to study the compound further. Under controlled conditions, the professor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly. The Galactic Council still has not decided whether humans will remain in the program. Steve stepped forward. Professor, we've been doing some research of our own. We believe there's something unique about human biology that allows us to process compounds that are toxic to other species. This is known, Zinter said dismissively. But what if that ability has other applications? Amy suggested. If humans can safely process these compounds, maybe we could help develop new medical treatments or detoxification systems. Dr. Venn, a jellyfish-like alien floating in a special suit, moved closer. The human has a point. Their detoxification pathways are unlike anything we've seen. It could advance medical science significantly. KLIK's eyes flashed with excitement. A demonstration would be educational for all students. Seeing how humans process these compounds could help us understand biological diversity. Professor Zinter looked from the doctor to Click to the humans, clearly conflicted. Finally, the professor's color settled into a thoughtful shade of teal. A controlled demonstration, Zinter conceded, with proper safety protocols. The educational value may outweigh the risks. 2 days later, the learning hall was reconfigured as a scientific demonstration area. The human delegates sat on one side, the alien students on the other, separated by a transparent barrier. At the center stood Steve, with Amy and Greg nearby to explain the science. Professor Zinter addressed the gathered students. Today's demonstration is unprecedented. We will observe the human consumption of a substance classified as toxic to most known species. This is purely educational and conducted under strict safety protocols. Steve began by showing the coffee beans, explaining how they were grown, harvested, and processed on Earth. He demonstrated the grinding and brewing process, while Greg explained the chemical compounds present in coffee. The primary active compound is caffeine, Greg said, pointing to a molecular diagram displayed on a large screen. It blocks adenosine receptors in the human brain, preventing drowsiness and temporarily increasing alertness. When Steve poured the finished coffee into a cup, several alien students moved back, despite the barrier between them. Others leaned forward, fascinated. In humans, Amy explained, our liver enzymes break down caffeine into compounds that can be safely eliminated from our bodies. Most species lack these specific enzymes, which is why coffee is dangerous to them. Steve drank the coffee as sensors monitored his vital signs. The aliens watched in silence as his heart rate increased slightly, and brain scans showed increased activity. As you can see, Greg said, the human remains fully functional and even experiences improved cognitive performance. What would be a dangerous poison to most of you is a beneficial stimulant to us. After the demonstration, Professor Zinter opened the floor for questions. The aliens had many, ranging from scientific inquiries about human metabolism to more cultural questions about why humans would deliberately consume stimulants. As the session ended, Dr. Venn approached the human delegates. Your biology is remarkable, the doctor said. I would like to conduct further studies, with your permission. This could lead to medical breakthroughs. Click joined them, now wearing a protective suit when near the humans. The other students are talking about humans differently now. Some still think you're reckless, but others are calling you biochemical marvels. Professor Zinter made a final announcement. The Galactic Council has reviewed today's demonstration and the medical data. They have decided that the human delegation will remain in the program, with certain safety protocols in place. A wave of relief washed over the human delegates. Their coffee habit had nearly gotten them expelled, but now it might lead to a deeper understanding between species. As they left the learning hall, Steve noticed several alien scientists carefully collecting samples of used coffee grounds for further study. Who would have thought, he said to Amy, that our morning cup of joe would become our first diplomatic incident and scientific breakthrough. Amy laughed. I wonder how they'll react when they learn about chocolate. 6 months passed aboard the Enlightenment. The coffee incident, as it came to be known, changed many things for the human delegates. At first, the changes were small. Signs in multiple languages appeared outside the human quarters, warning non-humans about potentially dangerous substances inside. The humans were asked to carry special containers for their beverages that sealed completely and had warning symbols on them. But as time went on, the attitudes of the alien students and teachers shifted. What began as fear turned into scientific interest, and then into a kind of respect. Steve noticed this change one day when a lithoid student deliberately moved aside as Steve walked down a corridor with his sealed coffee mug. The gesture is not from fear, the crystalline being explained when Steve apologized for taking up space. It is from respect. Your species consumes for breakfast what would kill most of us. You are stronger than you appear. In the medical research section of the ship, Dr. Venn and a team of xenobiologists worked closely with Amy, Greg, and several other human volunteers. They studied how human bodies processed not just caffeine, but other compounds found in Earth foods. Your species evolved on a planet with extraordinary biochemical diversity, Dr. Venn explained during one research session. Most habitable worlds have far fewer toxic plants and environmental challenges. Humans adapted by developing complex detoxification systems rather than avoiding these substances entirely. Amy found this fascinating. So instead of evolving to avoid toxins, we evolved to use them to our advantage. Precisely, the doctor replied, jellyfish-like appendages moving excitedly inside the protective suit. It is an unusual evolutionary path, but highly effective. We believe this may explain why humans have advanced so quickly, despite your planet's challenging conditions. Even Professor Zinter's attitude had changed. The professor now included regular comparative biology sessions in the curriculum, using humans as an example of unique adaptive evolution. One morning, Steve was surprised to receive a message from the professor requesting a private meeting. He arrived at Zinter's office, curious about what the professor wanted. Delegate Rogers, Zinter said, gesturing to a chair adjusted for human comfort. The Galactic Council has made a decision regarding humans that I wish to share with you. First, as you were central to resolving the coffee incident. Steve sat down, suddenly nervous. What kind of decision? A positive one, the professor assured him, color shifting to a pleased shade of blue-green. Humans have been reclassified from emerging sentience to Category 3 adaptive species. This is a designation usually reserved for species that can survive extreme environments. That sounds good, Steve said, not entirely sure what it meant. It is very good, Zinter continued. It means humans will be invited to join more advanced programs and participate in research initiatives throughout the galaxy. Your species' unique biology is now considered a valuable trait rather than a concern. The professor's 4 eyes focused on Steve. The research from Dr. Venn's team has already led to 3 medical breakthroughs. By studying how humans process caffeine, they have developed new treatments for neurological conditions in several species. Steve felt a surge of pride. What had started as an embarrassing cultural misunderstanding had turned into something important. There's more, Professor Zinter said. The Enlightenment will be returning to Earth next month, as scheduled. But the Council hopes many of you will choose to continue in advanced programs. I'll definitely consider it, Steve replied. This experience has been life-changing. The professor's color brightened. One last thing. The Council has approved a special addition to the ship. If you would follow me? Zinter led Steve to the ship's recreation area. There, a new room had been constructed with clear walls and a specialized air filtration system. Above the door, a sign in multiple languages read, Human Cafe, authorized species only. Inside, Steve saw coffee makers, comfortable Earth-style chairs, and several human delegates already enjoying drinks. Through the clear walls, alien students observed with fascination rather than fear. The council decided that rather than suppress human culture, we should study and embrace it safely, Professor Zinter explained. This space allows humans to enjoy their beverages while also serving as an educational exhibit for other species. Steve wasn't sure how to feel about being part of a living exhibit, but he had to admit it was better than hiding their coffee or being sent home in disgrace. As the final weeks of the program approached, preparations began for the humans' return to Earth. The Enlightenment would carry not just the human delegates, but also a group of alien scientists who had been invited to establish the first permanent research exchange on Earth. The day before departure, a formal ceremony was held in the main hall. The Galactic Council representatives presented each human delegate with a special commendation. Your species' ability to not only survive, but thrive while regularly consuming substances toxic to most life forms indicates remarkable evolutionary resilience, the council elder said as Steve received his medal. This may explain how humans have advanced so quickly despite your planet's challenging conditions. After the ceremony, Steve found Click waiting to speak with him. The young Proxian had become something of a celebrity among the students after surviving the coffee incident. I wanted to thank you before you returned to Earth, Click said. My experience, while unpleasant, led to greater understanding between our species. No hard feelings about the whole nearly killing you thing? Steve asked with a smile. Click's eyes flashed with humor. None. In fact, I am one of the students selected to visit Earth. I will be studying human biochemistry from a safe distance, of course. As the Enlightened prepared for the journey back to Earth, Steve noticed several alien scientists carefully collecting samples of coffee for further study. One of them, a senior xenobiologist, approached him. We believe your coffee and similar substances might hold the key to developing new medical treatments, the scientist explained. What is toxic to one species often has unexpected benefits for another. Steve watched as Amy packed her collection of exotic alien teas, all completely harmless to humans, but considered potent hallucinogens on some worlds. Who would have thought? Amy said, carefully wrapping a container of shimmering blue leaves, that our morning coffee would become humanity's ticket to the stars? Professor Zinter made a final entry in the official Galactic Council records. Humans represent a fascinating contradiction, physically less robust than many species, yet biochemically among the most resilient in the known galaxy. Their casual relationship with substances we consider dangerous suggests either remarkable adaptation or concerning recklessness. Perhaps both are true, and that is what makes humans unique among the stars. As the ship broke orbit and set course for Earth, Steve sipped his coffee and gazed out at the vast galaxy spread before him. The journey that began with confusion and fear was ending with new understanding and respect. And it all started with a simple cup of coffee. To new beginnings, he said, raising his mug to the stars. The universe, it seemed, had a strange sense of humor, and humanity, with its peculiar habits and remarkable adaptations, was just beginning to find its place in it.